Chapter 1, Lesson 1 of Algebra 1. This is going to feel very familiar. We've seen this in 6th grade math. We've seen this in pre-algebra. We're going to talk about variables and expressions. So a variable is a letter or a symbol used to represent a value that can change. In Algebra 1, we will stick with the variables. A constant is a value that doesn't change. That's a number by itself. A coefficient is a constant multiplied to a variable. Something like 3x, 4v. Those are, the 3 and 4 respectively, are coefficients. A numerical expression is a statement that contains only numbers and operators. Operators, those are add, subtract, multiply, divide. So no variables. An algebraic expression, on the other hand, is a statement that contains variables. It may also have constants, operations, coefficients. The key difference between a numerical expression and an algebraic expression is the presence of a variable. And the word evaluate means to determine the value of an expression. So, I'm going to have you do a couple of different things this section. First, we're going to be writing word forms of expressions. This is nobody's favorite thing, but it's not supposed to be difficult. Keep it simple. Okay, write each using words 2 different ways. Okay, so 3p. The operation is multiplication. So we could say 3 times p. The other easy way of saying that is the product of 3 and p. Product is the fancier word for times or multiplication. Next up we see 4 plus 2. So using words we could just write 4 plus 2. And yeah, you can just write the numbers down as numbers. I don't expect you to write them out in 8th grade. The fancier way of saying add 2 things is to say the sum of the 2 things. So the sum of 4 and 2. Next up is x minus 7. So again, the easiest way of saying that is exactly what I just said, x minus 7. The fancier word for subtraction is difference. So we could also say the difference of x and 7. And the other basic operation is division. This is y divided by 5. So of course that's one way of saying it, y divided by 5. The fancy word for division is quotient. So we could also say this is the quotient of y and 5. You'll notice when I use the fancy words, product, sum, difference, and quotient, I leave the order of the numbers, letters, variables, all of it as it is. Don't go messing with things. There are different ways to write these. You could say 7 less than x for x minus 7, but in all my years of teaching Algebra 1, using more than, using less than, they tend to cause problems because 7 less than x is not the same thing as x less than 7. Order matters with subtraction. My recommendation is don't use less than. Just simply state whatever it is as simply as you possibly can. So translating is one thing I'll be asking you to do. The other is substitute and evaluate. So I've got some expressions here that involve x, y, and z. And in the directions, I'm telling you that x should be 3, y should be 7, and z should be 2. So what I want you to do here is substitute. X is 3, y is 7. Now, that's a numerical expression. We can add those. 3 plus 7 is 10. Next up, we have x, y, z, which is all multiplication. So it'd be 3 times 7 times 2. Remember, we do not use an x to show multiplication anymore because x is a letter, so I'm going to use parentheses to show my multiplication. In here, it doesn't matter what order you do this in. Multiplication is, as I hope you remember, commutative, meaning you can do it in any order. I'm going to go ahead and just do this as it appears, though. 3 times 7 is 21. 21 times 2 is 42. Next, we have xy divided by z. So x is 3, y is 7, z is 2. Order of operations says you must multiply and divide from left to right. So 3 times 7 is 21. 21 divided by 2 is 10.5. You can write that as 10.5. You can write that as 10 and 1/2. You can even write that as 21 halves. In Algebra 1, I really don't care if your fractions are improper. And last example here, replace x with 3, y with 7, z with 2. And we remember our order of operations. It tells us to do whatever's in parentheses first. So 7 plus 2 is 9. 3 times 9 is 27.